Welcome to LG Transparent Conversations, the traveling podcast series powered by LG Electronics USA that brings crucial conversations about student-athlete mental health directly to campuses and beyond. I'm MJ Acosta Ruiz, and today's topic is women in sports. I'm thrilled to be joined by today's panelists, Dr. Cecile Reynaud, Claire Lessinger, and Laney Higgins. This has to be one of the coolest podcasts I've ever done. Welcome in everybody to Transparent Conversations powered by LG. I'm MJ Acosta Ruiz and so thrilled to be having this conversation. I've already overused the glass case of emotion joke, but here we go. We're going to lead off with it because it is a big moment, I think, for women in sports. A long overdue moment because so few people actually see the long road that it's been and still how much farther we need to go. So I want to give the flowers to the amazing panelists here with me today. Dr. Cecile Reynaud. I mean, let's just go through some of these accolades, okay? The current Vice President of Volleyball Operations for the Pro Volleyball Federation, former Florida State University head volleyball coach, Florida State University faculty member in sports management, a past chair of the USA Board of Directors, former president of American Volleyball Coaches Association. Oh, and by the way, she's a member of 5 Halls of Fame. Come on. Unbelievable. We also have Claire Lessinger. She's the VP of Events at Tampa Bay Sports Commission, the president of WISE Women in Sports and Events. We have a chapter over in LA. It's an unbelievable organization. And the former head coach of University of South Florida Women's Volleyball. And when we talk about what's to come and the next generation and what they're doing for women in sports and our footprint here, perfect example is Laney Higgins, who is a student athlete. She's with Oglethorpe University Women's Volleyball number 4. Okay, go get your jersey. She's an NIL Empowered 2.0 class member, the first female athlete who negotiated, got herself a very big sponsor for her content series, Walking and Talking. So go check that out on her Instagram. But really the focus here is not only how far we've come, what's still left to do, but also the nuances and the layers of being a woman in sport, whether you're on the executive side, the coaching side, the athlete side, or the sports journalism side. And I think a big part of it is mental health, right? That has been such a movement that we've seen, a change in the stigma and how we talk about mental health. We've seen it powered through social media, but I think the conversations that happen like this in an insulary capacity where you're talking to a dear friend, to somebody else who has walked the same steps with you. And Laney, I'd love to start with you with the athlete journey, right? Because your content is exactly about that, of what young women in sports, student athletes are doing on a day-to-day in between classes, practice, study hall, everything else that you need to do. So for you, how has it been navigating being a student athlete?
I think my mental health has definitely progressed with my athletic journey. Back in high school, I would define myself on my happiness, whether I played well or not. Yep. I would surround my happiness on if I was playing a perfect game, which is simply unattainable. Even if I was having a perfect practice, I would have to have every single perfect pass, or I would be in a terrible mindset and need to go in and get extra reps directly after a game and go in and do more reps. So I think I've really gotten my identity by learning that I'm not just volleyball, and I like to say that I was 99% volleyball and 1% aspiring businesswoman, and I like to say that I'm now the reverse because I've incorporated so many new aspects into my life and starting to really not define myself on volleyball and how I play.
Dr. Reynaud, I'd love to send this same question over to you, and I'll have you follow Claire. As someone who leads teams, who has led athletes, who has been part of this for the better part of your life at this point, how have you seen the progression in how women in sports are navigating that space?
Well, first of all, I'd like to give her a hug.
I know.
It's so important, and for her to share that story. But it is true. I mean, you are defined by that, and as a coach, you're defined by that too. When I would see longtime friends, they'd say, "How was your season?" Not "How are you?"
Right.
It was "How was your season?" So you were always held by what's going on in your volleyball life. But I think coaches have got to realize that these are young women and they're people. So we're coaching people first and not just athletes. But it's been a journey. I think coaches have got to have some place to go talk to people.
100%.
There's a lot of counseling for the athletes, but I think coaches, your life depends on the decisions of 18-year-old kids, and that's a long haul. You get older, they stay 18, and then you're 30, then you're 40, and they're still 18. So it's a long haul, but it's certainly worth it to be around and grow up with young women.
I mean, gosh, they said it all, but I completely echo what Cecile said. And from my journey as a player to a coach, you just grow, right? I think work-life balance is one of those words that we all seek to attain. Sure. It's not always attainable, but it is really important to think through that lens. And from a mental health standpoint, I think, as an athlete, you put so much pressure on yourself, and then now the young girls are society is putting so much pressure on them.
Yes.
So it's a double whammy. And I just love that there's more of this out there now, courageous conversations that are taking place and comfortably. People and media and TikTok and social media have allowed us to be really vocal and honest and real, which I think is helping people define who they are more comfortably instead of, putting themselves on a pedestal that's what they have to attain daily. And as a coach, I think really important, coaches need to adapt and adjust generationally,
right.
And it is about investing in these young athletes as people first, and that's really important.
Before you even said the word, I was starting to write it, identity, because I've had so many conversations around that in various different lanes, right? With coaches, with athletes, with former athletes who are now on the media side, certainly with myself throughout my career. And you're right, like so much of your identity is tethered to what you do rather than who you are. And I think a big part of that is us figuring out, well, who do I want to be outside of this label, of this title? And it's hard because we pour basically most of our energy into this because there is no other option. The margin of error for a woman in sports in any capacity is essentially non-existent. And everything that we do sets the tone and the bar for every other woman who wants to come behind us to do it. So it is a heavy load to bear. But I think to your point, Claire, having these conversations, and certainly social media, for better or worse, has allowed us to be more vulnerable with that side of it. But I think there's a big power in that vulnerability. And a lot of it is visibility, of being able to go on social media and share these stories, of putting on headphones and getting on front of a microphone and saying, okay, look, it's not as easy and as glamorous. I can't imagine anyone has that image of being a woman in sports, but even though things are heavy, we still carry them. Doesn't mean it's not hard and our backs don't hurt and the hips are hurting and all this stuff. But I think it's important to speak about the positive impact that it does have, because we've made so many inroads, certainly over a matter of decades. Claire, when you look back at just the progress of not only for athletes, but even just more women on the coverage side and on the coaching side and executive side, there are more of us for sure.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And, I think we've leaned in heavily to this, even at the Sports Commission, is creating these legacy and social impact initiatives that are really about empowering and celebrating girls and women in sports, because it's about making sure that if you see her, you can be her. And we are surrounded by that today. I have 2 boys, but they're growing up in a house watching women's sports. That didn't exist. Exactly. And so it's exciting. I know Cecile can talk about, we've come a long way. We have a long way to go. But we're riding a wave right now of momentum. And you're seeing it, clearly from attendance and viewership and investment. And it has a lot to do with, I think, women stepping up and really understanding that I have an opportunity to leave a legacy, and I'm going to use my voice to do so. Right.
Well, even Dr. Reynaud, you were coming here straight from a meeting, and so you're constantly working. So for you, both of you are so much in the fight on a daily basis. What has that progression been like for you throughout your career?
Well, so I had a long career in coaching, 26 years, then I was a faculty member, and then I was retired. And then a pro volleyball federation called and said, can you help us start a pro league for women in volleyball, which we don't have in the United States, except for Athletes Unlimited Head Start. Right. So it's an opportunity to give women a career and to stay at home in the United States and play volleyball, earn a living, and be role models for all these young people. And I think it's going to really elevate the sport. We'll be on television, we'll be in the communities, and it's an exciting time for me to see us go from nothing to something like that.
That's huge. Laney, something really stuck with me about what you said earlier in terms of you wanted to be a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, but your athlete side was so huge. And I think you've started to find the balance at only 19. I mean, my gosh, if I knew now what,
Right.
if I knew then what I know now. Why was that so important to you already to find that shift in not only who you are as an athlete, but also the other things that you aspired to do?
Well, I think I have a lot of really cool mentors that have paved the way for me and that I've always looked up to, like Claire, who I've known for the longest time and has always been a huge mentor for me, or Kristen Fassbender, who I've also always looked up to and has shown so much strives for womanhood. And so they've really paved the way for me and has been really groundbreaking. Yeah. And I've been always so inspired by everything that they do. And so I really look up to them and look to what they do on a constant basis, because women do support women.
Right.
And whenever I need something, they're always there for me, or if I have a question or if I need any help, women are always going to be there for each other and have each other's backs no matter what. So I think that's really cool, and I think mentors are a really big part of that.
That's right. I mean, so often we speak about, we stand on the shoulders of those who really had to pave the way, and there's still so much more paving to do and digging and just pushing forward to break a lot of not just the stigmas, but I think the roadblocks that really still exist. I think even just looking back at 5 decades of Title IX and everything that has happened through that, and we still see, as recently as a few years ago in the middle of a pandemic, female athletes fighting for that equality. And that's something I don't think that will ever go away. And if you're not vocal about things, then they'll never, ever change. But I do want to be vocal really about all of the accomplishments that you guys have had, because I think it's important to give people their flowers while they are still here. And I think sometimes, and I won't speak for all of you, right? I'll speak for myself. Sometimes it's tough to sort of acknowledge all of the things that you've done and lift off, because we're almost conditioned to stay humble, stay grateful. Even though you've done all of this and it's important, don't go outside the lines. Just sort of stay in your lane and understand that even though you've achieved this, you're lucky to even just be in this space. So, Dr. Reynaud, as you look back at your illustrious career and all that you've done, what are some of the things that really stand out to you in what you've wanted to accomplish outside of the accolades?
I didn't really know I wanted to accomplish anything except be in sport. And that was when I was in high school. I graduated in 1971, and we played because we wanted to.
Right.
We wore gym suits and pennies. We didn't really have teams that traveled, but it was fun. And so I think we all got in it for the right reasons back then, just because we loved to compete and loved to play sport. And then we learned so much. I grew up with women coaches at my university, and I was really fortunate that they were great role models for me. And it was in the Midwest, and then we just saw it continue to grow and grow, but we drove in cars, individual cars to our matches around the country. And now, we're going to see how these teams travel now. But it's been a wonderful road, and I think I just said yes to every opportunity I had.
100%.
And when you say yes, then, personally, you lose out on a lot of things, but I felt like it was important, and I loved every minute of it.
What about you, Claire?
Oh my gosh, I completely agree. As saying yes is like my favorite thing to do. So yes, sometimes my family doesn't appreciate it.
Right.
But Cecile, nailed it. I think this opportunity that we have as women is so important. Mm-hmm. And when I think about the opportunity to leave a legacy, and I've said that word a couple times, is really what people should look through, the lens that they should look through. I struggle with self-promotion because that's not why I do what I do. So to Cecile's point, it's being driven by passion and knowing that you want to impact others around you and you want to feed off others around you. Is truly what drives me. And when I look out here on this plaza and I see all these people and these smiles, like this is what we've worked 14 years to bring back to our community. And it wasn't about me. It's about this and about them. And so I think everyone needs to find their passion, and they need to do it for the right reasons. And you know what? If you're good at something, someone will nominate you for something, and you'll get noticed. It shouldn't be about that. My goal is to do that and be that. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I will say I've sort of leaned into my no era. Because after, I've been in the broadcast industry for 15 years now, and you do almost have to say yes to everything because the opportunities were so few and far between, especially at the higher level, right, where you get more visibility, and the visibility is typically what gets you the next gig and the next gig. But you're right, it comes at a cost. I can't remember at least 12 years without going home for the holidays in sports.
Right.
I don't know her. Who are those? So it does come at a big sacrifice, and your family and your loved ones and your friends do also pay the brunt of that as well, but they're supportive of you. But I'm leaning into more now the no era, not because I don't want the opportunities or I don't want to be in this space, but I think it's more of a qualitative thing. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Now that I have put in all of this time and all of this blood, sweat, and tears, are the opportunities I'm saying yes to really fulfilling that bigger picture of what I want to accomplish here? So, Laney, for you also remember that too, because you're already crushing it. But I think the value of things is really important as well. And to remember, okay, so now what else? What's the next thing? If I say yes to this, is what I'm sacrificing worth that sacrifice? That takes a while, as you both know, to really get to that point. But there have been so many key moments in my life that I said, okay, I missed out on Christmas with my niece, which was gut-wrenching. But now I have this incredible story that I hope will empower her to do other things and to continue on the road of what she wants to do later on in her life, right? So I try to find sort of the silver lining of the bigger purpose, that it's not just about me, but everybody else around me and what I'm doing there. And there have been, go ahead, Claire.
No, I was going to say, I bet Laney can attest to this too. It's also about, her dad works pretty hard, but also works pretty hard not to miss a game and to not be there for important. But the family is with him when he's working too.
Right,
so it's bringing your family along for the ride.
Yep.
I think for my boys, seeing mom work hard and know that, I'm driven and committed and passionate, and hopefully that will rub off on them, and they're going to be self-driven and, independent and all the things that hopefully will transpire from that.
100%. How important is it when you know your dad is there?
He's always been my role model. I say that my dad is my best friend, and I truly mean that. Ever since I was little, I was coming to all of these events, and I have always been saying I want to be him when I grow up. And so being able to see everything that he does and how successful he is and all the behind the scenes of how hard he works is really motivating for me. And my mom works in sports too, and so I always knew sports is going to be where I'm at. And they both work really hard, so it's been really good to see that and how successful it's been because of how hard they've worked.
I can tell it really does mean a lot to you. This is
it definitely does.
Pivotal point for you and your family.
Yeah.
And that's huge. I mean, it's a legacy thing for you, right? Like you've been engrossed in, but it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes kids are like, you know what, I don't want any part of this, but it seems like the ecosystem around you has built you up and empowered you to do that. For girl dads, man. That's why the movement is so big. There have been so many huge historical moments for women in sports. I mean, just when you think of the WNBA, when you think about this NCAA volleyball championship right now, there's a blue carpet. I mean, there's a huge crowd just across from us waiting to see these athletes, as they should, rightfully so, come down here for this tournament. You think about the World Cup, the Women's World Cup, and everything that we've seen and everything in between that. When it comes to college volleyball, and we were talking about this transparently in our prep call the other day, Dr. Reynaud, you said to have a blue carpet for them to get the acknowledgement that they deserve, that's huge.
Well, sure. I mean, we would roll up in a van and no one would be there, and there wouldn't be anybody in the stands because there was no publicity. And, it was just our families. And now I think people outside of their families, people in the community, watch them, and they see how athletic they are. They know how hard they work, and and I think they enjoy supporting the women's teams. Right. So when they pull up in the carpet out here in these beautiful buses and they're treated so well, I mean, it just means so much to me.
Yeah. It's a big thing for you, Claire, to see where it has gone to, and still knowing that it's still growing.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, I got to participate in a few of these myself, and this is sure not what it looked like when I was in them either. But to now be on the flip side of that, and to be able to be part of the city that gets to host it and ensure that these student athletes are feeling this type of red carpet welcome at every turn, is what host cities, NCAA, can help dictate. This is where we are. These athletes deserve this. They've earned this. And so we take a lot of pride in that. The student athlete enhancement and experience is absolutely number one for us when we get the opportunity to host these major events, and to hear some of the comments from the coaches and the student athletes from this week already. We haven't even played yet. Has just been so heartwarming, because that was the goal. And I hope to see this continue to build and grow off this historic season.
No question.
Laney. If I could just say one thing. So at this event, we have a woman that's leading the whole event management part. So Claire Lessinger is responsible for getting this here. And Kristen Fossbender, the director of the NCAA National Championships, another woman. I mean, it's two women that are carrying the load here. And I just think a shout out to you two for putting this kind of a show on.
Thank you.
Exactly.
If you want something successful, just have women do it.
There we go.
We know that. Laney, this is your wheelhouse, right? You're a student athlete in the volleyball space. So when you look out and you see the fans showing up, the type of recognition that the athletes are getting for all the work that they've put into, how pivotal is that for you as an athlete that's still growing her career?
Well, I've actually gone to this event the last 6 years. My dad and I have flown out to every single one of them and gone to the AVCA convention and really seen the atmosphere really grow, which has been so amazing. And I really hope that it trickles down to Division II and Division III, because my teammates are doing such amazing things, and hopefully that visibility really shines through and trickles down to them, because we matter too, and
of course
all women matter. And I really think that as this sport grows, so will the visibility.
It's huge. And I want to touch on a second, because we talked about your content and your series, and I think the NIL space has been game changing for so many athletes, but most of the time what people see is just like the big names, which of course absolutely deserve the recognition, but for what you've done, and someone coming from a Division III space where you did it all on your own. You were emailing CMOs, you were negotiating your NIL deal, you are the one putting this content, booking your guests, from soup to nuts. How has that transition been for you?
It's been really life-changing for me, NIL. Before, I was very much in my shell and very introvert, but with NIL, I've been able to grow and learn a lot about myself through other women. I've found a passion in supporting other women, whether that's having them on my content series I have called Walking and Talking, and interviewing them so they can show their fans and their followers just who they are outside of their sport, or just supporting them in general. I'm always reaching out to whoever I can to help, or do anything I can in the NIL space to help them. So it's been really awesome, and I feel like NIL has been really life-changing for not only me, but so many other people around the country.
Laney, I want to give Laney some props real quick.
I mean, unbelievable.
Yes.
I'm trying to learn from her.
I know, but she should be the role model for NIL deals, because
100%.
she's associating with brands that align with her, her wishes. And she's also, very cause-driven. So she's giving back. And this is, the NIL space is the wild, wild west. But a lot of student-athletes taking full advantage of the NIL space. Laney is so strategic, and she's, intentional, yes.
Yeah. When you have your own firm or your own network, and you just remember, I'll do consultant work, whatever you need, you're definitely not just the future, but very much the present of where we want to see this going. And I think these conversations are a huge part of it. Why do you feel, Dr. Reynaud, that these conversations are so important? Because I think they happen in silos, but in the greater space, more people getting involved, I think, would be huge.
Well, I think we need to understand that you are learning a lot through sport, but I think also you get uncomfortable at sport, and you have to learn how to get yourself through it. So two teams play, half of them lose. Right. Somebody's going home a loser, and you've got to learn how to figure that out and live through that. And so if you can build a structure, play with a team, try and compete, but then still understand that you might not be successful at the end of the day, I think that's a big thing for business people and business women. So, and to be able to talk about it and know that's going to be a possibility, that not everybody's going to win at the end of the day.
No question. The resilience part of it is huge. Not just in sport. For anything you do in life, right? There's going to be ebbs and flows, and it's not always a fun ride. What about for you, Claire?
I think as women, traditionally, we don't want to necessarily accept fault. We don't necessarily want to talk about failures. And so these types of transparent conversations that have become almost cool, you know, have broken a barrier, I think, for women to collaborate more, to support and empower more. And now learning is cool, right? Like, I just am so thirsty and hungry to continue to learn from others. Cecile is one of my role models and one of my mentors, and she coached against me for years. But the fact we can sit here generationally and have this type of audience and have this type of conversation, thanks to LG for truly like creating this space, because it's important.
Laney, for you, and as you're having these conversations, not just on your platform, but even just amongst other women in sports and in your life, what do you glean from these conversations, and what do you want others to get from them?
I think these tough conversations and open and honest conversations are really needed to be had, or we would be content in where we're at, and there would be no growth and development in our sport or just in our society in general. And so these conversations bring out people questioning what's right and wrong, what the potential is, and so I think it's really important these conversations are meant to be had. No
question. I think the more we talk, the more commonality we find amongst us, the more touch points there are, the more parallel lines. Like, wow, wait, I went through something similar, even if I've never coached, right, or I've never run an organization before, or I've never hit the volleyball court. Like, there are things that unite us more so than divide us. When was there a time where you had almost an enlightenment moment, Dr. Reynaud, in a challenging point of your career?
I think that was probably on a daily basis, but you've got to just really, I think as a coach, you've got to learn to believe in yourself. And, you know, I think the Taylor Swift song, I'm the problem, it's me. You know, a lot of times we've got to just really investigate ourselves and how we are with people. And so I think the light bulb moment, it comes on all the time. But I tell you, the Nebraska match this fall, where they had over 90-something thousand people in their football stadium, I mean, that's a light bulb moment for a lot of people, but that really shows me where the sport is today.
Right, you, Claire?
You know, I think it, for me, has been control the controllables. You know, when I settle there, I can find a lot of peace and comfort. While I was coaching, you know, there were so many reasons and excuses for, you know, if your team wasn't doing well. And so I had to really work hard to separate what I could control and what I couldn't control. And now gosh, players entering transfer portals and all the things you can't control as a coach today. I know how much harder that is, but I think truly that's where I kind of find balance is even running the show here, you know, for this tournament is like, hey, I cannot fix this problem. I can't control that it went wrong. I just need to shift into problem solving mode and let's figure out how to Band-Aid it and keep moving.
By the way, I just want to point out, we went a whole 20 minutes before our first Taylor Swift reference. So I'm proud of us, guys.
Sorry, I'm a Swiftie.
I love that.
Aren't we all?
Right. I think now whether you didn't know her before or not, which sounds crazy, everyone is on board. For you, Laney, when you think of how much more you still want to accomplish, I'm sure already as a student athlete you try to balance everything. You've hit some points of contention or some points of real growth for yourself. What were those like?
I think I try to take advantage of every opportunity I've earned and been given as much as possible, because they just lead to more and more things. And so taking advantage of those and then trying to be the most hardworking person in every room that I walk into, I try to outwork every single person that's beside me or working next to me. And so trying to really take advantage of that and working your butt off as much as you possibly can, because I've tried to kind of develop this underdog mentality at the Division III level. You kind of do.
Sure.
And so it's really about that. So,
the chip on your shoulder. I get it. I understand.
And that's why you coach. You want to coach people like her. You want a fantastic attitude.
I mean, I think that's the word. And I love that you said the opportunities that I've earned. Right? Because I think so often people want to think like, oh, well, you're just here because you're checking a box, or you're just here because of this quota, and I think it's tough. And I know in my career I've experienced that, being the first, being the first and the only in so many rooms, that when another woman does come in, what the ancillary folks want to do is say, I don't know if we can have both of you. And what I've experienced overwhelmingly in my path, because I've been very intentional about this, is we are stronger together.
Oh.
I get so excited when I walk into a locker room and there's another female reporter. I'm like, sis, okay, we're friends now.
Yes.
We're friends now. We can balance each other out. We can lift each other up. And it has been the constant in my career. And I think to your point, Claire, control the controllables. How you treat other women, how you uplift other women, how you support other women genuinely and intentionally makes such a difference in this space. And for you to say that Dr. Reynaud is a mentor to you, for Laney to say the same thing about you, like it's for a reason that we're all in this room, truck, box, podcast studio.
Space.
A space.
Fishbowl.
Space. Right. And taking up that space, I think, is huge. When you've walked into some of these rooms, Claire, and owning that space and owning the role that you have and being in charge, how have you grown throughout your career in that sense?
Well, I mean, relationships are key. I mean, I can't say that enough. I tell young athletes this all the time. Like, it's great what you know, but it really is who you know.
No question.
9 times out of 10, I wouldn't be at the sports commission if it wasn't a relationship that I had with Rob prior to, because I didn't know anything about this job. I just had a skill set that I think was somewhat transferable, but I didn't realize that at all. And so building those, those relationships that are going to last a lifetime, where you have mentors and sponsors, and that, again, like that's happening organically.
Yeah.
I see so many people try to force a networking event just to, try to create these relationships that aren't real, right? So it's like, go be yourself, go invest in others, go be intentional and passionate about what you're doing. And these amazing relationships are going to form that are going to last a lifetime, that are going to be like, I can call this person at any time.
I know.
And
it's huge.
That network is truly what's going to move this needle for women, as you mentioned, like the collaboration and support and strength of numbers.
I want to take a quick pause specifically for you, Dr. Reynaud, because this was a moment that you were waiting to see. And for those of us listening on, the athletes are walking through the blue carpet, and the crowd around them right now cheering. They have spotlights on them, just walking through. A hero's welcome, really, as it should be. I think I saw a band member. Is that a trombone? Yes, it is.
Yes,
a sousaphone.
band members,
I think it's the appropriate. I danced on a dance line with a band before, so I know it's not tuba, it's sousaphone. But this is the moment, right? To take it in, to see them have this welcome that they have earned, to your point, Laney, to be here at the NCAA tournament. This is huge. And these are the moments I think that we can hold on to when we think about the progress and where we're going.
And when you think about the hard work these women have put into this sport, probably from junior high on, and to walk onto a stage like this in front of a crowd in Tampa and just be applauded and respected. And again, this crowd is going to be entertained tonight when they see them play. So good for them, and I'm so proud of the organization that puts this on.
Yeah, I mean, I got chills for a second, because you guys listening on may not be able to hear it because we're in a very cool soundproof podcast studio, but we can hear it sort of outside of our headphones, and there was just this roar for a moment there. And those are the moments that, for an athlete, for a fan, for the support systems, the parents and the friends and the fans that are here, this is so cool to watch. And the entire fan zone, LG was very intentional about the transparent conversations. As much as everybody can see us, we can also see it and still be part of it as we continue the conversation. But Laney, you have been to this tournament several years in a row. I'm sure you envision yourself having a moment like this as well. So as you're watching the athletes come in, what's going through your mind?
I get chills, honestly. Yeah. I am so inspired by not only them, but I love how the young kids are just so inspired as well by them, and that they want to grow up and be just like them. And I think that's so inspiring that's our role models today, instead of those the men in our lives or those like that. So I think having those role models that are not only college athletes but female college athletes is just so amazing.
Yeah, you said it. If you can see her, you can be her.
I was blown away. So we also did a red carpet welcome for the athletes at the tarmac when they got off their FBO. And so you're listening to these players do their interviews, and the Nebraska players specifically, like they're hugging these little kids and getting pictures with the young girls. And they were saying that they wanted to make a huge impact on young girls' lives. And, starting with that sellout crowd and, of course, all the recognition that they received, but that the student athletes today, like that is their goal, is to inspire the next generation, is just like gives me chills.
There's 2 young girls that just walked up in front of us, and they're holding signs, and I can tell they got a few players to get their autographs and their signatures, and that's exactly it. Right, that is exactly it, for these young ladies to know this is not only attainable, but it's available to me. I can see it, it's tangible. And I think that's something that, to your point earlier, Dr. Reynaud, overall in the visibility and the amplification of women's sports had been lacking for a really long time. So to see this, this concourse in front of us is absolutely packed with fans here. And it's a testament to the athletes and to these women that have put in so many hours, so much blood, sweat, and tears into being at this moment. I would love to talk a little like sports for 2 seconds, if we can, and just like the tournament itself, because you guys have all been working so hard. I know your dad's running around trying to.
She's working the event.
She's working the event as well. Media. So your fingerprints are quite literally all over this as we see people really cascade into the arena for a moment here. What are some of the things you're really looking forward to, Dr. Reynaud, once this tournament starts?
I think the athleticism of these athletes. We talked a little bit about Wisconsin, whose athletes are 6'8", 6'9", 6'6". They were comparing them to some of the I think the NBA teams, not WNBA. Right. They were talking about, but just the athleticism, the grace, the physicality. There's going to be some long rallies, and so I think this is going to be a real education for people watching, and I think it's just going to be a super moment.
I love that, Claire.
Yeah, hats off to the exposure the sport is finally getting and what it deserves, and we have a long way to go there as well. This will be on ABC for the first time ever on Sunday. But to see Cecile's point, you are going to see, the rallies that have taken place. They've ended up on ESPN Sports Center Top 10. Yep. It's the product. The product that is out on that floor is mind-blowing. Yep. And so it's transcending just volleyball fans. Anyone who's tuning in is wanting to become a volleyball fan. And I think that's why it's so contagious right now. And every night, it didn't matter. I have the ESPN package, but it was 10 games on at one time. You could, I went up and watched 2 at one time in my house. It's so exciting.
That's tremendous. Laney, I know you've been following this very closely. For you, what are you looking forward to the most?
I think just the competition and the high energy that's going to be in the stadium. I think that it's going to be really electric, and fans are going to be really into it. I know my team has. We would get together and watch all the games as team bonding, but we really were just hanging out and being able to talk about volleyball when we're not playing it. So it's really cool.
My mom played volleyball throughout high school and college. She grew up in the Dominican Republic, so the beaches were very accessible, beach volleyball specifically. I gave it a shot and broke my finger. So that was the end of volleyball for me. It is extremely difficult, very, very rigorous, but it's one of the most entertaining and just like fast-paced, you can't take your eyes off the court. And it shows. This is why there are so many people here. This is why there's so much support for it, and why people love it so much and really lean into it. What are your hopes for the future of the sport and for women in the sports, Dr. Reynaud?
Well, one of the things that may not be well known, but there's never been a female coach that has won the Division I national championship. Right. And we've gotten close. Mary Wise at the University of Florida has been in the finals several times. I've actually been doing the chop, I think, and just trying to get that over the top.
Cecile.
Okay, I'm sorry, I can't quite get it. I don't do it publicly very much either. But I think just to have more women at the high levels, and I think we've had maybe 6 out of the 20 or 6 out of were women, and so we're getting more and more at that top level, and they understand they can work hard, and they're getting hired at these big universities and get the support. So we're going to put it over the top soon.
I love that, Claire.
I mean, she said it all. I mean, that truly is. I think, that's going to be the biggest barrier. And so many people have been rooting for that. Louisville was close last year. Mary's been close. There's been a handful of close. We're almost there to having our first, team coached by a woman to get that monkey off our back. Yeah. But it is so great to see it. I do think, though, like a lot of the women have come up as assistant coaches, working for men, and you're starting to see that change too, where they're getting hired, they're the first choice, and that's exciting.
Yeah. For you, Laney, I would imagine you've had both female and male coaches. Yeah. Is there a difference? And this is no shade on skill level, but for you, just even on a level of comprehension and like just inherent understanding, is there a difference for you when you do have a female coach leading you?
I currently have a female coach, and I'm obsessed with her style. She's very inspirational and is always thinking of the next thing that we're going to do. And her, just listening to her and how her mindset is just amazing. And so I'm really inspired by that. But I think women in general have kind of that chip on their shoulder, like we've been talking about. And I think that is what makes everybody really buy into everything that they're saying and back up what they're saying.
I'd love to explore more of the coaching side of it, because I think across all sports, the WNBA, NCAA, women's basketball, there is always, without question, a stricter sort of criticism of the female coaches, right? And I'm sure you may have experienced this as well, Dr. Reynaud. So living in that space, there's no question that you have a chip. You have to. It's a boulder, really, at that point. How do you navigate through that space? And do you feel like that has changed at all, evolved at all over the years?
I started at Florida State when I was 22 as the head coach, so I never really had the chip. I always thought I could do it. I didn't know it wasn't a possibility.
Right.
But there is an organization nationally called WeCoach, and it's to support and retain and promote women coaches, and it's all sports. And there's nothing more exciting, and the NCAA supports it, nothing more exciting than to walk into that room full of 50 coaches, field hockey, soccer, swimming, volleyball, and they're all working together to try and make it better. And so they all mentor each other and support each other throughout the year. And that's one of the most exciting things I do all year, is get to speak with that group.
Oh my God, that's the same question for you, Claire. I mean, you said you guys coached against each other.
Right, yes. And, WeCoach is a fabulous organization, so I'm so glad Cecile brought that up. And, I think one of the biggest challenges for female coaches, and I was one and I got out of coaching, is being somewhere where you have the resources to be a mom and to coach and to juggle and feel like you have that support around you, from your admin. Yeah. And I think that's a big struggle for women in this space. And I know one that is talked about a lot in organizations try to figure out how to retain women because of these challenges in terms of trying to be mom and trying to be coach and trying to be 100 other things that we all try to be, right?
Right.
And so I think that's probably why you see the attrition, and it's figuring out, how women can have the resources they need to find the balance to be good at both. I always said I'm never going to be great at both of these things. I'm just going to try to be good at them, and that's important to know that you have an administration that leans into that.
How important is it administratively for those who are supporting you from the top down to be women as well, to really understand what the plight is and what the spinning multiple plates at the same time while you're trying to juggle and do all of that? How important is to have leadership, female leadership in these positions?
Well, I think it's especially important if they've coached or they've been an athlete themselves. If they've been on the court, I think we talk about people can criticize you as long as they've been on the field trying it too. And so I think to have good female leaders that have been involved in sport and understand you're going to have ups and downs, and just to be there for you all the time and to be there for those athletes, I think that's really important.
Huge.
I was going to say that lived experience is really important, when you have admin, and they can be great at their job administratively, but if you haven't walked in the shoes of the student athlete and the coach that is grinding and fighting for their student athletes every day, because you got to go ask a lot and get a lot of no's, right, from admin. But when they understand what you're asking for, why you're asking for it, because they've been there, that's a whole different relationship. We know how to accept no. We might keep pushing and keep asking, but as long as they understand why, it's not just a budget line. Let's figure out how to make this happen because it's right. That goes a long way, and the best administrators I ever worked for were former student athletes.
Wow. I can almost see Laney in like one of these
She's going to run the world.
Leadership roles for sure. I don't know if that's something you aspire to do. Maybe you go in as a consultant situation. I'm sure your dad can navigate that space for you. But like, these are the voices, right? Like the young voices who are in the thick of it, because I think even myself from a journalistic standpoint, learning how the shift in the industry, the shift in athletics, even just the social media aspect of it, it's not just about creating the content and posting pictures, it's about the conversations that are going on. And so I'm so proud to be sitting here with all of you. I'm so proud that we're having this conversation, and there's so many different lines of perspectives, but look at all the overlap that we've all had here today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of LG Transparent Conversations. For more episodes and to catch up on season 1, check out LG Transparent Conversations on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or at lg.com/us/transparent-conversations. LG, life's good.